I picked here 3 topics. I must say these topics are sort of have been on my mind for a while. First, as an academic, I was chair of data science in the University of Nottingham for 5 years, which then involved working with computer science students and, of course, researchers in AI primarily. It was data science, machine learning, AI. And one thing that I observed was that everybody was grabbing the AI title. So even the traditional statistical methods suddenly became AI. So I first want to make a comment. As we are asking about ourselves about opening AI, it will be also very useful to talk about what we mean by AI that is of interest and what we want to be open about. So that's going to be the first topic. Then I will discuss briefly of what I believe is likely to have an impact, because when you're asking people to do anything, you have to be very clever. You can't ask them to do many things. So you ask people to follow and contribute things so that you believe will have the highest impact. So I'll comment on that a little bit. And then I have one suggestion that we need to all do to improve use and sharing of AI in general. And I won't tell you what it is until we get to that, okay? So first about opening AI topics and what to be open about. Because AI now means many things to many people, the answer is very important, and that answer of what we want needs to be very much informed by context and by, say, technology that we believe will be useful. So for those people who do not code and do not use AI in anger, like master students or undergraduate students or PhD students, they're the ones who, in fact, create algorithms, working with professors and others, innovating constantly, creating new models and so on. So it is very, very useful, in fact, to see what they do and what you can ask them to do if you want them to participate in any type of openness and sharing. And it was already mentioned about a little bit about competition and so on, but I would really want to focus on the practices that we put in place that are serving certain purpose, like in academia, ensuring that innovation goes forward, ensuring that the new generations are informed and educated. We put them in the boxes and say, you better have X many papers in AI so that you can get your PhD in AI. And those, those papers need to have you as a first author. So we need to think about what is it and what is the context in which AI innovation happens, and then in which context is getting applied, and then in which context we want it to be continue to be applied. So that's why I'm basically saying we need to dive deeper into what AI means before we can say what we want to share. And here I just mentioned a couple of things. In many instances, people apply algorithms, and you see those algorithms already exist. You can get them off the shelf, if we call them. You have them in different suites of tools. So I personally will not argue and say I must have that AI algorithm, because they are there. It's there because it is becoming a commodity. You can use them. Now the second bit is the code that is AI code, if you wish, the programs. They then require data because most of these systems are learning from data. Now that becomes a tricky bit because the data comes from another stakeholder. So we have now code, we have data. When we put all this together, we apply training and so on, we come up with a model. And so there is an output of this symbiotic relationship, symbiotic sort of procedures between the coded algorithm, the data, and the process in which we created the model. You can argue you want to have a model shared. And then if that's the case, then we will need to understand better whether that model reveals anything, say, from the data that the data stakeholder may be worried about. Yeah. So the main point here I want to say, if you're going forward with the AI, opening AI topics, let's engage then with people, practitioners who are doing it. And let's see precisely which context requires what to be shared. Because if you come up with some kind of policies, blanket policies that would supposedly enable opening AI universally, it's very likely that that will be shut down. it doesn't matter how good intent may be behind that effort. If the stakeholders feel that there is some risk and that risk is not addressed, it's not going to happen. And in fact, it may backfire very badly. And I'm speaking from as somebody who lives in UK, and recently, NHS decided that they would like to support innovation by sharing data, some data from patients, and that backfired because it wasn't managed properly. The press says one, the expert says another thing, and people are confused. And guess what? People may just starting to opt out. So even the best intent can go wrong unless there is this clarity and the stakeholders' interests are addressed. So I'm going to go to the next one now. It's about what's likely to have an impact. And again, we know that there have been so many benefits from sharing data. So open data has really gone far because people can use data in new contexts. They can use them in combination. They can derive new insights. So we have kind of already practiced how to have that impact through the data. Now the question is, if you start doing a similar thing with code and with whatever we believe AI should be shared, we probably cannot make too many asks, as I said, because in many instances there is a complexity of multiple stakeholders, and you will have to manage that very carefully. So I would just say that if I have to choose between somebody giving me a code and somebody giving me instructions or experiences or insights that they have gained from their applications of particular technique, I would choose the latter. Because in many applications, you have to modify models, you have to modify code, you have to do this because it's the nature of the area. But the insights that was gained to previous applications and previous research, that's extremely valuable so that we don't make the same mistakes. And that comes, believe me, that comes from the experience I have simply getting new students and they're having to learn what has been done before. And the importance of transferring this knowledge, even the smallest skill that may take you 2 hours to figure out how a certain feature works, well, somebody can tell you in 2 minutes. So there is a huge productivity loss, and there is a huge waste of resources, especially if you're talking about projects that are funded from research councils in a best intent to promote innovation, yet the waste of time and the wastage from not transferring that knowledge is huge. So if I want to say the impact is not going to be necessarily in sharing code, the impact will be in the sharing of practices. And the last thing I'd just like to address, if you ask me now from the perspective I have working in industry and also now working with my company, what we need to do is make sure that AI and other algorithms are reproducible. Essentially, without reproducibility, we cannot do validation. Without validation, we cannot guarantee anything. And that raises huge issues with the ethics of applying it, the accountability, the responsibility, and eventually, if somebody applies it in the wrong way, it's a liability. Yeah, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natasa, for your timeliness and also for all the issues that you raised. And so openness is the key message that I keep. Openness is for sharing experiences, sharing intangible things and not the code or the data and so on. And let's make everything reproducible. Excellent.